Well, hello guys. Hope you're doing well this week. This week we're going to be continuing to talk about the man Abram, and we're going to specifically talk about his children a little bit and how he got them and the journey they went through in trying to have children, him and Sarai, and they'll also get a name change this week. And so we're going to cover several chapters. It's a big chunk, but we'll just do bits and pieces from each chapter. And so you'll look at Genesis chapter 16, 17, and 21, just a few verses from each chapter. But the big things here, we see that Abram and Sarai, they couldn't have children, and that was a big deal for them. People in this day and age, they wanted children. They specifically wanted sons to grow their family and to carry on the family name. And when they couldn't have children, it would be a point of shame, actually. And so they really struggled with this, wanting to have children. And so because of the pressure they felt, we see that they went and took matters into their own hand. When God had promised them children, they were impatient a little bit and took matters in their own hand. And so we see that Sarai, she offers her servant Hagar to Abram and says, look, have a child with her, and she'll bear the child and it'll be ours. Things worked a little differently here in this context, since the slave belonged to Sarai. If she had a children and Sarai was there, they could basically claim that it was Sarai's child. And so, but we don't see that it went down as smoothly as that. We see there's a lot of tension, a lot of strife, a lot of fighting. Hagar, she ran away a couple of times, and the Lord convinced her to go back, and it wasn't smooth like they envisioned. And there was fighting between Abram and Sarai because of this, and Abram just said, look, you just do what you want to do with her. And so there were consequences to their decision, and I believe it even affected Abram's relationship with his son Ishmael. And so because they didn't do it God's way, there were consequences, and it doesn't look like the consequences were very easy and to deal with. And then we move to chapter 17, and here we see that this is where Abram and Sarai, they get their name changed to Abraham and Sarah, which is what they're most famous for, those two names. And so we see that God changes names sometimes to give people a fresh start. Abram and Sarai had done a lot of things that they probably weren't proud of, a lot of things that didn't honor the Lord. And so they ended up getting a name change. And I believe that was the Lord saying, look, your past is your past. Let's move forward. The same thing he does with us. We might not get a new name, but we can have a restored relationship with him, and one where he forgives us for our past mistakes. And then we see here that God, after he gives a name change, he makes a promise. Look, this time next year, Sarah's going to have a child. And Abraham laughs at him. He didn't believe him. And he didn't think it was possible for them to have children at that age. And he makes his own request. He said, Lord, look, just forget about this child thing. Just bless my family and bless the nation of the earth, the promise he made earlier. Bless the nation of the earth through my son Ishmael. I have a son. Bless him through Ishmael. And God says, no, that's not my plan. That hasn't been my plan. That's not the promise I made to you. I'm going to do it through your own son. And so this time next year, you'll have a child. And so in chapter 21, we see they finally have the child. They name him Isaac. And I'm sure at this point they were excited, happy, disbelief. But at the same time, I bet they felt pretty foolish and shameful for the fact that they didn't obey God. They didn't do what they didn't do it God's way. And they'd cause a lot of heartache for themselves and for others because they took matters in their own hands. And ultimately, the last few things here are what's really important. When we think about this, God took a long time to fulfill his promise to Abraham and Sarah. And I believe that God was reminding them that he's in control. You see, if Abraham and Sarah had children in their prime, when they were young and when all their other friends were having children and when it was normal for them to have children, it would have been easy for them to say, oh, there's nothing special about this. God wasn't involved. They may not have given God the credit, but because it was such extreme circumstance, they were very old. They had to give credit to God. They had to honor no one but God in this situation. And so I think this is a way that God was showing them, look, if I can do this, I can do these other things, other great things in your life. Trust me and follow me and obey me because I have great things for your future and for your family. And so that's what I believe. And then lastly, the big picture, the big thing from this story that we see is that God, he makes good on his promises. He always keeps his promises, no matter the circumstances, no matter how big the promise is or how small the promise is. He keeps his promises. And so when God tells us things like, hey, my son Jesus Christ is returning one day, we better believe that Jesus Christ is going to return one day, and because God makes good on his promises. And so we see the main thing from all this is that God fulfills his promises. Hope this helps. Looking forward to seeing you guys this week.